There's a specific type of danger that emanates from someone who has been broken by the world and chose to rebuild themselves on their own terms. It's not physical violence, it's something far more powerful, the quiet confidence of someone who survived the worst humanity can offer and emerged unbreakable. Carl Jung observed this phenomenon repeatedly in his clinical work. Individuals who had endured profound isolation, cruel judgment, and systematic rejection developed a psychological strength that made them dangerous to systems that depend on conformity and fear. What most people don't realize is that extreme adversity, when survived and integrated, creates a type of person who can no longer be controlled, manipulated, or broken by conventional means. You didn't just survive your experiences, you were forged by them into something that threatens every structure built on keeping people small, dependent, and afraid. This isn't about becoming cruel or vindictive. This is about developing an unshakable inner foundation that makes you immune to the tactics that control most people. Jung understood that isolation, judgment, and rejection, while painful, serve as initiations into a level of psychological development that few people ever achieve. By the end of this video, you'll understand how your worst experiences became your greatest strengths, why your transformation makes you dangerous to toxic systems, and how to use your hard-won wisdom to free others from the prisons you escaped. Your journey through hell didn't destroy you, it armed you with weapons that most people don't even know exist. The first way your experiences made you dangerous is that isolation forced you to develop a level of independence that makes you immune to social manipulation and control. When the world pushed you into solitude, whether through rejection, betrayal, or circumstances beyond your control, something profound happened in your psychological development. You were forced to become your own source of validation, your own source of strength, your own source of truth. Jung called this process individuation through isolation, where external abandonment creates internal sovereignty. While others were learning to depend on social approval and external validation for their sense of worth, you were developing an unshakable relationship with yourself that no one can threaten or take away. Modern psychology confirms what Jung observed, that people who survive prolonged isolation often develop enhanced self-reliance, emotional regulation, and internal locus of control. Your isolation wasn't punishment. It was training for psychological independence that most people never achieve. During those long periods alone, you learned to trust your own judgment, to validate your own experiences, to find strength in your own company. You discovered that you could survive without the approval, attention, or support of others, and this discovery made you incredibly dangerous to anyone who tries to control people through social pressure. You can't be manipulated through threats of abandonment because you've already survived abandonment. You can't be controlled through social exclusion because you've already thrived in exclusion. You can't be broken through isolation because you've already found wholeness in solitude. This independence makes you threatening to people who maintain power through keeping others dependent. Your ability to stand alone means you can't be forced into compromising positions, toxic relationships, or situations that require you to betray yourself for acceptance. Jung understood that true power comes from not needing anything from anyone, and your isolation gave you access to this power. You learned that you are enough, complete in yourself, capable of creating meaning and purpose without external approval or support. This psychological independence is rare and powerful, making you dangerous to anyone who profits from people's need to belong, to be accepted, to be included at any cost. But isolation was just the beginning of your transformation. The judgment you endured calibrated your ability to see through falseness and hypocrisy with devastating accuracy. When people repeatedly criticized, attacked, and condemned you, something unexpected happened in your psychological development. Instead of internalizing their judgments as truth about yourself, you began to see these attacks as information about the attackers themselves. Jung observed this phenomenon in people who survived sustained criticism. They developed what he called psychological X-ray vision, the ability to see through surface presentations to underlying motivations and insecurities. Every judgment directed at you became data about the person making the judgment. Every criticism revealed more about their shadows than your supposed flaws. Every attack exposed their projections, their insecurities, their need to diminish others to feel bigger themselves. Modern neuroscience shows that people who endure repeated judgment often develop enhanced pattern recognition and emotional intelligence as protective mechanisms. Your brain learned to quickly identify the difference between constructive feedback and destructive projection, between genuine concern and disguised attack, between helpful correction and manipulative control. This ability to see through people's masks and motivations makes you incredibly dangerous to anyone operating from hidden agendas or false personas. You can't be fooled by superficial charm because you've learned to read the energy behind the words. You can't be manipulated by fake concern because you recognize the signature of genuine care versus performative empathy. You can't be deceived by impressive presentations because you see straight through to the authentic self underneath all the performance. This discernment terrifies people who depend on their ability to fool others, to present false versions of themselves, to manipulate through emotional theater and psychological games. Your judgment-trained intuition cuts through their carefully constructed facades like a laser through smoke. Jung understood that people who survive systematic judgment develop immunity to opinion and an uncanny ability to distinguish truth from projection. You learned not to take personally what others say about you because you understand that their words reveal more about their inner world than yours. This psychological armor makes you dangerous to anyone who tries to control others through shame, criticism, or judgment, because these tactics simply don't work on someone who has survived their worst applications and emerged with clarity intact. And then rejection completed your transformation by activating a level of self-sufficiency that makes you absolutely impossible to control through emotional manipulation. When people repeatedly rejected you, pushed you away, or made it clear that you weren't wanted, your psyche had to develop strategies for emotional survival that most people never need to access. Jung called this the development of the sovereign self, a psychological state where your sense of worth, love, and belonging comes entirely from within rather than from external sources. You were forced to become your own source of love, your own source of acceptance, your own source of emotional nourishment. While others were learning to seek validation and emotional support from outside themselves, you were developing an internal emotional ecosystem that sustains itself independently of external input. This doesn't mean you became cold or disconnected. It means you became whole in yourself, capable of loving and connecting from a place of fullness rather than need. Modern attachment theory confirms that people who survive rejection often develop what's called earned secure attachment, where they learn to provide for themselves the emotional stability and care they never received from others. Your rejection wasn't abandonment, it was liberation from emotional dependence that keeps most people trapped in unsatisfying relationships and situations. You learned that you don't need anyone to complete you, validate you, or make you feel worthy of love, because you developed the capacity to provide these things for yourself. This emotional self-sufficiency makes you dangerous to anyone who maintains power through emotional manipulation, codependency, or the promise of love conditional on compliance. You can't be controlled through threats of emotional withdrawal because you've already survived emotional abandonment. You can't be manipulated through promises of love and acceptance because you've learned to generate these experiences internally. You can't be trapped in toxic relationships because you'd rather be alone than compromise your authentic self for artificial connection. Jung understood that emotional independence is the foundation of all other freedoms, and your rejection experiences forced you to develop this independence in ways that make you virtually uncontrollable by conventional emotional manipulation tactics. Which of these transformations resonates most with your experience? Let me know in the comments, because Jung realized that these experiences create a specific type of person that poses a fundamental threat to systems built on control and compliance. Your isolation, judgment, and rejection didn't just make you stronger. They made you ungovernable in ways that threaten the very foundations of how most social, professional, and personal power structures operate. Jung observed that people who have been broken and rebuilt themselves develop what he called psychological indestructibility, a state where they simply cannot be controlled, manipulated, or broken by conventional means. This isn't because they're harder or colder than others. It's because they've already survived the worst-case scenarios that most people spend their lives afraid of experiencing. You've been rejected, so the threat of rejection holds no power over you. You've been judged and criticized, so disapproval can't be used to control your behavior. You've been isolated and abandoned, so you're not afraid of standing alone when necessary. This freedom from fear makes you incredibly dangerous to anyone whose power depends on keeping others afraid. Employers can't use the threat of firing to make you compromise your integrity because you've survived unemployment and rejection before. Family members can't use emotional manipulation to control your choices because you've learned to trust your own judgment over their opinions. Partners can't use the threat of abandonment to make you accept unacceptable behavior because you've discovered that being alone is better than being with someone who doesn't appreciate your authentic self. Friends can't use social pressure to make you participate in activities or behaviors that don't align with your values because you've learned that true friendship doesn't require self-betrayal. Jung understood that most people remain controllable because they're terrified of experiencing the very things you've already survived and overcome. Your experiences gave you immunity to the fears that keep most people trapped in situations that drain their life force and compromise their authenticity. This immunity makes you dangerous because you can't be bought, threatened, manipulated, or controlled through conventional means. You operate from a center of gravity that exists entirely within yourself, making you unpredictable and uncontrollable to people who are used to pulling strings and getting predictable responses. Your independence threatens every system that depends on people's neediness, fear, and willingness to trade their authentic selves for security, acceptance, or belonging. But your experiences didn't just make you uncontrollable. They developed capabilities that Jung considered almost supernatural in their power and precision. Surviving isolation, judgment, and rejection created what he called the wounded healer archetype, someone who gained extraordinary abilities through extraordinary suffering. Your pain wasn't wasted. It was transformed into weapons of insight and healing that make you dangerous to lies, illusions, and false systems in ways you're probably just beginning to understand. Your isolation developed your intuition to levels that can feel almost psychic. When you're forced to rely entirely on your inner guidance, that guidance becomes extraordinarily refined and accurate. You learn to trust subtle feelings, energy shifts, and intuitive hits because you didn't have anyone else's opinions to rely on. This heightened intuition makes you dangerous to anyone trying to deceive you, manipulate you, or operate from hidden agendas because you can sense truth and lies at levels that bypass conscious reasoning. Your judgment experiences developed your ability to see through personas and pretenses with X-ray clarity. You learn to distinguish between what people say and what they actually mean, between what they project and what they really feel, between their public face and their private reality. This discernment makes you dangerous to anyone whose power depends on fooling others because you simply can't be fooled. Your rejection experiences developed your emotional radar to detect genuine versus performative care, real versus manipulative concern, authentic versus strategic interest. You learn to feel the difference between people who truly want your well-being and people who want something from you. This emotional intelligence makes you dangerous to energy vampires, emotional manipulators, and anyone who uses false care to gain access to your resources. Jung observed that people who survive extreme adversity often develop what he called compensatory gifts, enhanced abilities that emerge as psyche's response to trauma. Your experiences forced your consciousness to evolve in ways that give you capabilities most people never develop. You can read people, situations, and energy with accuracy that can seem unsettling to those who prefer to operate in shadows and ambiguity. You've developed immunity to gaslighting because you learned to trust your own perceptions over others' interpretations of your reality. You've developed resistance to manipulation because you've seen every tactic applied at its worst and learned to recognize the patterns. These abilities make you dangerous to anyone whose success depends on others remaining unconscious, manipulable, or easily deceived. But there's something even more dangerous about who you've become through your experiences. Your presence alone threatens the status quo because you represent living proof that the systems designed to keep people small, dependent, and controllable can be transcended. Jung understood that individuals who achieve genuine psychological freedom become threats to every structure built on keeping people psychologically imprisoned. Your inner freedom exposes the mental prisons that others accept as normal. Your emotional independence highlights the codependency that others mistake for love. Your ability to stand alone reveals the desperate neediness that others hide behind social performance. Your comfort with authenticity exposes the exhausting pretense that others maintain to fit in. You've become dangerous because you represent possibilities that threaten the foundations of systems built on limitation, fear, and control. Your existence proves that people don't have to stay broken, don't have to remain victims, don't have to accept less than they deserve just to belong. You're living evidence that isolation can become independence, that judgment can become discernment, that rejection can become self-love. This transformation makes you threatening to every person, organization, or system that profits from people's limitation and dependency. Your freedom gives others permission to question their own prisons. Your strength shows others that they too could develop resilience instead of remaining fragile. Your independence demonstrates that they could learn to validate themselves instead of desperately seeking approval from others. Jung observed that genuinely free people always threaten established power structures because freedom is contagious, and your presence spreads the virus of possibility to everyone around you. You can't be used as an example of what happens to people who don't conform because you've thrived despite nonconformity. You can't be pointed to as proof that independence leads to misery because you found joy in autonomy. You can't be used to frighten others away from authenticity because you've discovered peace in being real. Your very existence is propaganda for liberation, and that makes you incredibly dangerous to anyone whose power depends on keeping others small, afraid, and dependent. You've become a walking advertisement for what's possible when someone chooses growth over safety, truth over acceptance, and freedom over belonging. Do you recognize this dangerous power in yourself? Write it in the comments, because Jung discovered something profound about the ultimate purpose of your transformation. Your journey through isolation, judgment, and rejection wasn't random suffering. It was preparation for a mission that only people with your specific combination of strength, wisdom, and freedom can fulfill. Jung called this the transcendent function of individual suffering, where personal pain becomes the foundation for collective healing. Your experiences didn't just make you dangerous to toxic systems. They made you essential for the evolution of human consciousness beyond those systems. Every person you encounter who is still trapped in the fears you've overcome has the opportunity to witness what's possible on the other side of those fears. Your presence alone teaches lessons that can't be learned from books or theories. People can see in you that rejection isn't the end of the world, that judgment doesn't have to be internalized, that isolation can become empowerment rather than punishment. You've become a bridge between the world of limitation and the world of possibility, and that bridge function is incredibly dangerous to systems that depend on people believing they have no choice but to remain small and controllable. Your mission isn't to convince anyone of anything or to force anyone to change. It's simply to exist as proof that transformation is possible, that strength can emerge from suffering, that freedom is achievable even after the worst experiences. Jung understood that consciousness evolution happens through individuals who refuse to accept collective limitations as personal boundaries. You're not just living your own life, you're pioneering possibilities for human development that others will follow. Every boundary you refuse to accept, every limitation you transcend, every fear you move through creates a pathway that makes it easier for others to make similar journeys. Your danger lies not in what you might do to others, but in what you might inspire others to do for themselves. You represent the possibility of liberation from every form of psychological, emotional, and spiritual imprisonment that keeps humanity operating below its potential. This is why your transformation feels so significant, why your growth seems to radiate beyond your personal life into every environment you enter. You're not just healing yourself, you're participating in the healing of human consciousness itself, and that participation makes you dangerous to every force that profits from human suffering, limitation, and fear. But there's one final truth about the danger you represent that Jung considered the most powerful of all. You've developed the ultimate weapon against oppression, tyranny, and control, which is complete psychological indestructibility, combined with the wisdom to use that strength in service of liberation rather than domination. Your journey through hell didn't make you hard, it made you strong. It didn't make you cruel, it made you compassionate. It didn't make you bitter, it made you wise. Jung called this the Phoenix transformation, where complete destruction becomes the foundation for rebirth into something far more powerful than what existed before. You didn't just survive your experiences, you alchemized them into gold. Your pain became wisdom, your isolation became independence, your rejection became self-love, your judgment became discernment. This transformation makes you the most dangerous type of person to oppressive systems, someone who has power but uses it ethically, someone who is strong but remains compassionate, someone who is free but works to free others. You can't be corrupted by power because you've learned that true power comes from within. You can't be seduced by revenge because you understand that healing is more satisfying than harming. You can't be manipulated into using your strength to dominate others because you remember what it felt like to be dominated and refuse to perpetuate those cycles. Your danger lies in your ability to remain human while possessing capabilities that transcend normal human limitations. You represent the possibility of evolved human consciousness, power without corruption, strength without cruelty, freedom without selfishness. This combination is the greatest threat to every system built on the belief that power inevitably corrupts, that strength must dominate, that freedom requires stepping on others. You're living proof that another way is possible, that people can become incredibly powerful while remaining incredibly loving, that the strongest people can also be the kindest people. Your presence challenges every assumption about human nature that justifies oppressive systems and controlling relationships. You've become dangerous because you represent hope for human potential that threatens everyone who has given up on that potential. Your transformation isn't just personal victory, it's collective possibility. And that possibility is the most dangerous force in the universe to anything built on limitation, fear, and control. Stop apologizing for becoming dangerous, because the type of danger you represent is exactly what this world needs to heal and evolve. Jung spent his entire career studying individuals who transformed their worst experiences into their greatest strengths. And every single one discovered that their personal transformation served purposes far beyond their individual healing. When you embrace the power you've developed through surviving isolation, judgment, and rejection, you become a force for liberation that threatens every system designed to keep people trapped in limitation and fear. Your danger isn't something to be ashamed of or hidden. It's something to be celebrated and wielded with the wisdom you've earned through your journey. The world doesn't need you to become smaller, safer, or more acceptable to those who are threatened by your growth. The world needs more people who are dangerous to lies, dangerous to manipulation, dangerous to systems that profit from human suffering. Your transformation from victim to victor, from broken to powerful, from isolated to independent, represents hope for everyone who is still trapped in the experiences you've transcended. Share this video with someone who has also become dangerous through their pain and needs to understand that their transformation is a gift to the world, not a threat to be contained. And tell me in the comments, which aspect of your dangerous transformation surprised you the most? Your story might be exactly what another survivor needs to hear to fully claim the power they've earned through their own journey through hell and back.